Hello guys, welcome to another video of Writing with William. Today, as promised, we're going to speak a bit about the actual process of writing for clients, and specifically I'm going to relate it to a client I had recently which resulted in a four-figure payday of $2,000. So I'm going to speak about how to find these clients, a bit about what to do when you get the briefing from the client, what is the process from the first draft to the final submission, what happens next, and in particular at that final point, I'm going to relate to you a bit of a surprise that I discovered with the client I'm talking about. They're based in the Middle East, and I got a bit of a surprise, a pleasant surprise at the end. So keep watching to the end to discover the real knack to maximizing and 10xing the type of returns you can get from your writing just from one client. So without much further ado, let's get into it. Thanks for joining me. So I recently had this client on Upwork. They were based in the Middle East and they wanted me to essentially do a corporate profile, quite a lengthy corporate profile on a very large organization. Now, where did I find this client? First and foremost, I found them, surprise, surprise, on Upwork. This video is not sponsored by Upwork.com, but that is where I found them. And these jobs can be found all the time. Let me show you. This is just from today. We've got a book writer needed, executive ghostwriter for a CEO needed. God, who is that CEO that wants a writer? Part-time English native copywriter needed for social media content. Senior editor for a crypto pre-sales articles. If crypto is your thing, get involved. Blog writing expert needed. Blog writing expert needed. Copywriter for sales copy. Professional article editor and publisher. Save. That sounds pretty good. And weekly email copywriter. The possibilities are endless. You will never be out of work again. And guaranteed, this will be completely different tomorrow. There'll be a raft of new jobs available for the budding writer. So that's where you can find clients like the one I'm talking about. They're all on Upwork. The jobs are updated in real time every single day, every single minute of every single day. There's plenty of work out there. Now, what do you do when you land the client? Well, the good clients, they'll give you a briefing. This briefing will lay out the nuts and bolts of the job that needs to be done. Now look, when you go into these jobs, you have a rough idea of what's needed. You communicate with the client beforehand. You can ask them any questions. They can ask you any questions, usually relating to your previous experience with similar jobs. And then you know, both the client knows and you know roughly where your respective levels are at, and you know you can do business and you can get cracking with the work. But then the client, once the job starts, will give you a briefing. This should theoretically give you 90%, if not more, of the intent, of the intel, the content that you need in order to do the job as effectively as possible. Now look, in my previous video, I spoke about the importance of research, and that is still true. You've got to do your homework, you've got to do your research with every single job. So when a client gives you a briefing, use that briefing. Make sure you understand the briefing that's given to you. If you have any questions, ask the client. Do your reading around the subject matter. Try and bulk out the research for the briefing as much as possible. But remember, you are a freelancer, you're a solopreneur. You're not David Ogilvy yet. You don't have an army of researchers doing research for you, going to client sites and interviewing all the employees of Shell and Mercedes and Rolls-Royce. You are pretty much on your own. So find that balance between a good amount of research and also good writing. You're not expected to know the subject matter like you're an expert, unless you are an expert in a certain field, but generally speaking, when you start out, you are more of a generalist. So make sure you do the research in line with the briefing. Don't go overboard with it. Just do enough to make sure that your writing is as good as possible, and then also find that balance with good writing. Good research, good writing based on the briefing from the client. You cannot go wrong. 2, the first draft, the notorious feedback that you get from the client the first time round. Now, look, 99 times out of 100, at least in my experience, that first draft will come back with feedback. Not every single time. Sometimes you get lucky and you nail it that first time and that's everything they're after. But for most clients, the first draft will not be enough. They will send it back to you, and this is your opportunity to really shine as a writer. But this is when you have to be resilient, and this is when you have to have self-belief that you are a good writer, because there will be red lines, there will be highlights, there will be suggestions, there will be comments. They will say things, this sentence doesn't make sense, even though you based it just off their briefing. There are certain things which may be frustrating, but this is part of the process. As a writer, it's not the first draft that you do which will make you shine as a writer. 9 times out of 10, it's the second draft, the third draft, the fourth draft. It's the edits that you make to the copy which really make it stand out and really lend it that magic that separates it from the rest. And that's what they're paying you for. They're paying you for that magic. So when you get that first draft back, incorporate the comments, make suggestions, work with your client, and don't be disheartened and don't be afraid. This is all part of the process to make you a better writer, to make the client happy, and to give them the work that they need so they can give you good feedback and give you the payday you want, and therefore everyone is happy. So the first draft's important, the second draft's important, and these revisions and comments and suggestions and amendments, this is what takes the copy from its initial stage through to the final stage, and it's an important part of the process. Learn to love it because it's always slightly frustrating. Finally, step number 3, submit the work. Now look, sometimes this is quite anticlimactic. You'd have worked on these various drafts, you've got the brief, you've done the research, you've done the feedback, you've incorporated all the comments, you've edited here and there. The first draft looks completely different from the current draft 6 that you're working on, and then all of a sudden, that's it. You submit it, the client's happy. Sometimes they don't even come back to you, they just release the money and it's all done and dusted. Sometimes they do and say thank you, that's great, that's always great to hear. But a lot of the times it's just anticlimactic. You do the job, they say thanks, no more further changes needed, and the job is over, it's done. Now look, in the case of my client, the 4-figure client based in the Middle East, which I've been speaking about, when that happened, I submitted that first draft. They had initial things that they wanted to change. They had the feedback and the edits in the previous stage that I mentioned. But when I submitted that final draft and they came back and said they were happy, they then also came back, and this is the pleasant surprise, they said, we've got more work to do. Can you do it? Can you do it now? And I said, well, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. So that led to another job. And then slowly but surely, as I was getting on with that job, they then said, oh, we have this other report. Can you do that? And I said, yes, I can. So then I was doing 2 different jobs on the go at the same time. And then they came back and said, can you do another one? And at this point, I just said, yeah, give it all. Let's see what we can do. And so basically, including the first job, I had 4 jobs simultaneously on the go for one client. And ultimately, I went through the same process with all these different jobs, these additional 3 jobs. And then when it was all done and dusted and finished, I ended up with a 4-figure payday of $2,000, all from one client. And this is the thing about clients, especially the good ones. If they trust you and if you do the work the way you say you're going to do it, you do the research, you incorporate their comments, you show yourself as amenable and good to work with, the ones that have a lot of work going, they'll just give you the work because it's easier to do. The easiest people for you to sell to are people you have already sold to. The best clients to work with are the ones who trust you, they know your track record, and they know you can do the work well, because that's the quickest way to get from initial job through to payday, clients you've already worked with. So that's a pleasant surprise from the client. I worked with them once. Before I knew it, I had 4 jobs with that same client. It was a complete surprise, but that's how it works. And as a writer, you have that freedom, you have that flexibility to work with clients all over the world and to do as much work as you can handle. So there you have it, guys. That is the story of my 4-figure client, $2,000 from one client based in the Middle East. To be honest with you, I loved working with that client, and as a writer, you really do get to work with clients all over the world. Like I said, they were based in the Middle East. I was doing really interesting corporate profiles with this client, and that was for not just one company, but several different companies, and it was really genuinely interesting work, the kind of work I never thought I'd actually do as a writer. But when I actually got started on it, I thought, well, this is absolutely something I can do more of, and I have done more of that sort of work for clients since then. So there you have it, guys. 4-figure paydays are possible with clients through copywriting. Look for them on Upwork, find them, do the work, do the research based on the briefing, make sure you do your homework and do it effectively, make sure you incorporate all the feedback and the edits that you need to get it through from the first draft through to the final submission, and then finally submit the work, the final draft. Get that 5-star feedback, get those 4-figure paydays, more life, more work, more blessings, more fun. As a writer, it's all there to be had. You've just got to go for it. Take that leap of faith, work with clients all over the world, and see your writing put everywhere. The interesting thing is, you're going to end up seeing different documents that you've worked on, and no one's going to know that you worked on them, but you have. And really, that's the secret sauce as a writer. You can really make things happen for your clients. You may never get the glory, but you'll get the money and you'll get the feedback and you'll get the adulation from the client, and that's really what it's all about. Right, until the next video, see you next time. Ciao guys.